What's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we're bringing it back to our Bill and Ted marathon of films with the third and final film, which was just released to digital and select theaters. It's Bill and Ted Face the Music. Bringing back not only Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter as the excellent duo themselves, but it also pulls a bit of its own endgame and throws in a lot of familiar faces that you may or may not be expecting as well. But no worries, I won't be spoiling this movie. That would be most bogus of me. Honestly, I'm just glad that I saw the movie before The Undertaker claims my body. So let's see if this lives up to my hype, and let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, Undertaker, one whose business is to prepare the dead for burial and to arrange and manage funerals. Bill and Ted are back in Bill and Ted Face the Music when they are once again faced with a dilemma of extraordinary lengths. This time, all of time and space is collapsing in on itself, and the guys only have an hour and 10 minutes to write the song that'll supposedly unite the world and bring peace to the universe. Whoa! That was the only thing that I could say when I first learned that they were finally making a third film to the trilogy, a franchise that I've grown up watching and loving. I knew that no matter the outcome, I was going to have a great time with it, and I'd say that's absolutely true. You could tell while watching that this movie mostly feels like a passion project. That is, a movie that the filmmakers made without really caring what anybody else thought. It could be great, it could be terrible. They didn't really care. All they wanted to do was hang out, make a movie. I've only really seen a handful of movies like this, and you can almost always tell because the chemistry is just always insane. It's like everybody has a giant weight lifted off their shoulders where, usually everybody else is trying to make a cinematic experience. In Bill and Ted 3, you just have a collection of people having fun making a movie. That's it. To heck with all the naysayers, right? So, no matter what, I have mad respect for what they're doing here. Besides that, this is a film that is packed to the brim with nostalgia. Nostalgia that'll give you the widest smile while watching from beginning to end. But let's go ahead and get real with this third movie because it was automatically going to have issues anyway. The first problem that it has is their ages. They're both 55 years old, so their personalities no longer match their physiques. They just don't. Skinny teens in the late 80s and early 90s fit these roles better. The whole excellent, bogus, and whoa stuff was era appropriate in the time period of the first two movies. But people mature as they age, and for a lack of a better word, they get a lot more boring when they get older, usually. Their ages aren't fully disregarded, though, since they do have responsibilities as adults, but I just can't see these 55-year-olds naturally saying these things the way that they're saying them anymore. And beyond that, I don't think that they're really bouncing back into the roles. Alex Winter mostly did pretty great there, but Keanu Reeves sometimes felt like he was forcing those instances of dude and whoa in his scenes. It's really weird, actually. The chemistry is there, 100%, but the dialogue wasn't. At least not always. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Another problem the film ran into was the time travel itself. It had the same problem as the first movie. That is, they just don't understand how the future operates. If Bill and Ted don't make their song right now, the future won't exist, blah, 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 blah. Then how did it exist in the first place? If they need to be prompted by the future constantly, then naturally they wouldn't have ever made their song, and the future would have never existed in the first place. It's the whole bootstrap paradox plot hole thing that happens all the time in time travel films, but it's a little bit worse here because in Bill and Ted, they just don't care. The last problem here is that for some reason, it's a little bit convoluted. There's a ton of characters, a ton of time periods, there's a lot of stuff happening all at once. There's like 3 or 4 stories going on simultaneously, and one of those stories isn't even focused on at all, which makes me wonder why it's even there in the first place. I can't even tell you what these stories are without spoiling you. Just know that one has to do with what Bill and Ted are doing, another has to do with what their daughters are doing, another has to do with what their wives are doing, and the last one has to do with what the future is doing. It's ridiculous, and it's mostly unnecessary. One thing the movie did extremely well was come to a climactic conclusive ending for the entire trilogy. It finally feels a lot more complete than it ever has in the past. Sure, the last 2 movies had endings that you can be satisfied with and never need another installment, but what this movie does is satisfy those things that make you crave something more final and more decisive. So I wouldn't say it's the perfect film, but as a general rule, it's still a lot of fun, and it did make me smile so much while watching. Let's take a look at the final score for a second. From an unbiased vantage point, this film didn't really impress with the stuff going on behind the scenes, stuff like visuals, cinematography, editing. I think most of that stuff was technical technically better than the last two movies, but with time, that was bound to be the case. Mostly, this film was technically decent, but nothing that'll blow your mind. That unbiased score 78%, and my bias score isn't too far off, but a little bit higher at 80% because that nostalgia really does bring you back and make you fall in love with these characters all over again. When we average out the two scores, we come to the final rating of 79%, 79 out of 100 possible stars, granting Bill and Ted Face the Music with a letter grade of C+. It's not bad, but I would technically say it's the weakest of the trilogy because some things were just kind of unavoidable. Let's hear your thoughts on Bill and Ted Face the Music, though. In regards to the trilogy as a whole, what are your thoughts? Is it everything you ever dreamed of? Is it better? Or is it like last night's garbage? Tell me down below. As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this review because there's always more like it coming out each and every single day. Hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us. We think